Hi everyone, it's Tarrant.
And Stella from Meeple University. Thank you for being here.
Today we'll be teaching you how to play Gravwell, the second edition. Let's learn to play Gravwell, second edition, game designed by Corey Young and published by Renegade Game Studios.
If you find value from this video later, please hit the like button, subscribe to us, hit the bell and leave your feedback in the comments for others to find. For now, let's learn Gravwell.
Gravwell is a race. In the game, 2 to 6 players floating out in space will attempt to get from one warp gate to the other using their gravity-powered engines as propulsion. Chaos will abound as players set their propulsion or repulsion engines and then lock onto the nearest source of mass in order to determine which direction they move, which may not be in the direction they are intending. The first to reach their target warp gate wins the game. To set up, place the board on the table and the round tracker on round 1. Place one of the pieces of space junk onto each of the debris field spaces. Each player chooses a ship and the 4 ability cards in that colour. The emergency stop, which all players will have, should be flipped to the charged side, and the other 3, which are unique to the player, should be flipped to the uncharged side. All ships are then placed on a starting warp gate. At 2 to 4 players, all players will be on the same warp gate, and it doesn't matter which, while you'll split the ships at 5 or 6 players, with 3 on one warp gate and 2 or 3 on the other. In this instance, players will be racing in opposite directions, trying to reach their finishing warp gate. Find the deck of fuel cards, and then at 2 to 4 players, remove any cards showing this icon at the bottom. Shuffle all the remaining cards, and deal each player a hand of 6. You're now ready to play. Gravwell is played in a maximum of 6 rounds, but will usually end earlier than that as soon as someone reaches their target warp gate. Each round is played in 6 turns. On each turn, each player will choose one card from their hand simultaneously and play it face down in front of them. These will all then be revealed and resolved in alphabetical order. So here blue would be resolved first, then red, then green, then yellow. All cards from that turn are discarded and then cards are chosen for the next turn. After the 6th turn in a round, all players will be out of cards and you'll advance to the next round and draw up to a new hand of 6. So now let's have a look at how each fuel card works. The first and most common type of fuel card is the standard tractor beam, represented by the blue card with the single tractor icon. A ship using this locks on to the nearest single source of mass, which is another ship or a piece of space junk. Then moves that number of spaces in that direction. Right now, the red ship using this card would move 5 spaces forward in the direction of the green ship. The green ship would move 5 spaces backwards in the direction of the red ship. You ignore any objects in warp gates when using one of these beams, and so blue in this case would lock onto red and move 5 steps forward. If you are the same distance away from your 2 nearest points of mass, then count up the total number of objects on each side of your ship and move in the direction with more mass. So here green has 2 ships behind and has 3 objects in front, so would move in the forward direction. If this is also tied, here for example equal distance and 2 objects in both directions, ignoring the warp gate, then the ship does not move. Multiple objects cannot occupy the same space after movement, and so if you were to land on another object, you would continue moving until the next open space. This is called drifting. Multiple objects could chain drifts together, so here the blue player would move 2 steps and drift all the way to here. The second type of fuel card is the standard repulsor beam, and this is coloured red and represented by the single repulsor icon. To resolve this, lock onto the nearest source of mass using the same rules as a standard tractor beam, and then move this many steps away from that object. Here, blue's nearest object is this space junk, so blue would move 6 steps in this direction, while green with the same card would be moving 6 steps in the wrong direction. The third type of fuel card is a multi-point tractor beam, and this is coloured purple and shows 2 tractor icons. A ship that resolves this draws all other objects in the Gravwell this many spaces towards itself, without itself moving. This can cause several objects to drift over each other, so it's important that you resolve them in the correct order, starting from the nearest objects and then moving out to the furthest objects. If tied, you'll attract from nearer the inner warp gate first and then nearer the outer. In this instance, red resolving this card would result in green being attracted 2 like this, then blue being attracted twice like this, black being attracted twice like this and drifting, and then both pieces of space junk also being drawn towards the middle. Warp gates are treated like normal spaces for multi-point tractors, and if there are multiple objects in a warp gate, then the player taking the turn will choose which order they move in. The last type of fuel card is the Multipoint repulsor beam, which is orange and has multiple repulsor icons. These are only present in the 5 or 6 player deck. The player resolving this will stay stationary and push all other objects this many spaces away from their ship. Once again, starting from the nearest objects and then finishing with the objects furthest away. You could even push someone else into victory with this card. It is quite likely that at some point during the game you will have ended up playing a card which, due to other scenarios, is going to take you a long way in the wrong direction. Never fear, for this scenario your ship is equipped with an emergency stop button. If your emergency stop is on the charged side, then you can flip it over to the uncharged side to simply discard the card you've played without resolving it. However, if it's not charged, then you're stuck with whatever the cards deal you. Each ship also has 3 of its own abilities. These begin the game uncharged, and in this circle here it shows you the condition that you need to meet in order to charge it. Here, for example, Tentacle Grasp is charged if you end your movement on a debris field space, while Quantum Root System will charge if you drift over 1 or more objects as part of a single move, and that one could be anyone's move. Once charged, you can flip it over and uncharge it at any relevant point in order to resolve the effect printed at the bottom of the card. Once all players have played and resolved their final fuel cards for the round is over, and you'll advance to the next round. Players who use their emergency stops recharge them to start the round, and players who did not use their emergency stops may charge any one of their other powers for free. Players will now go mining for a new hand of 6 fuel cards, and this will begin with the player whose ship is nearest the Merton Cloud, or nearer to the inner warp gate in the event of a tie. Then shuffle up all of the fuel cards for your player count, both used and unused from the previous round, and deal them out into a number of piles of 3 cards equal to the number of players times 2. In each pile, 2 cards will be face up and 1 will be face down. The player nearest the Merton Cloud chooses 1 pile to add to hand, and then chooses whether the remaining selections will go clockwise or anti-clockwise around the table. You'll then draft piles in that direction until each player has drafted 2, and therefore has a new hand of 6 cards for the next round. The game continues until any one player reaches their target warp gate. The game ends immediately, and that player wins the game. It's also possible for the space junk to beat the players into the warp gate, and while this should probably hurt your egos, the game keeps going until a ship reaches the warp gate. If no one has reached their warp gate after 6 rounds, then the game also ends, and the player or players who are nearest their target warp gate win the game. And that's how to play Gravwell, 2nd edition. We hope you enjoyed this video.
If you enjoyed this video, please help us by hitting the like button. Subscribe to us. You can also hit the meeple in the corner to do so, and hit the bell icon so you'll be one of the first to know when we have new and exciting videos. You can also follow me on Instagram for my board games journey.
And if you have any questions, comments or feedback, please leave them in the comment section below.
See you next time!